Okay, welcome everybody to our second Worth and Wealth webinar. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Carrie Palazzo and I work at the Office of Economic Empowerment. Today we're going to hear from Oriana Falkowski and we are going to be discussing setting financial goals today. I'm also joined by my colleague, Jennifer Duran. Jennifer will be in the chat if you have any questions during the webinar today. And after Oriana's presentation, we will have time for some question and answers. Please feel free to use the chat for any questions. All right, today we are talking about setting financial goals. And just as a reminder, today's Zoom meeting will be recorded. The recording may be uploaded onto a public website for future use. Please note that the chat record is subject to public record laws and as such is not anonymous. Okay, let me introduce Oriana Falkowski to everybody today. Oriana Martinez Falkowski is an accredited financial counselor and founder of Money Map Coaching, where she helps Latinas transform their relationship with money. She offers one-on-one financial coaching and uses a holistic approach that considers culture, trauma, systemic barriers. Originally from the Dominican Republic, she lives in Western Massachusetts with her family. Oriana, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. As Carrie mentioned, my name is Oriana Falkowski, and I have the pleasure of talking to you about setting financial goals today. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am originally from the Dominican Republic, and I grew up with a single mom. And I never had a lot of financial literacy, but as I got older, I got very interested in figuring out how I could use my money to do more than just paying bills. And that's how my passion for financial literacy started. And then it became a way of me, making money. And now I am a business owner. And my business is Money Map Coaching, where I help folks get clear on their financial goals and figure out a plan to make them happen. So this topic is very dear to my heart. A few things before we get started. Please feel free to participate in the chat if you are comfortable. I always like to encourage folks to have money conversations whenever possible. A lot of what I see with my clients is that people feel like they're alone when it comes to money challenges. So if you see that somebody makes a comment and it resonates with you, you can like the comment. Maybe you can respond to it if you're comfortable. And it's just a way of us seeing that we are not alone in our money struggles, and it's more common than we realize. Please ask questions. We're going to have some time at the end of the session to ask questions, and there's no such things as silly questions. You will get an email after the session, maybe later this week, I think by Friday, where you will get the recording of the session and you will get the slides and also the resources that I'm going to mention. So you don't have to worry about taking notes unless you're someone like me and it helps you focus. Feel free to do that. But you will get everything that I talk about here, you will get in an email. So let's see what we're going to cover today. First, I want to talk about why it's important that we set financial goals. Then I want to look at some common mistakes that we often make when setting financial goals. And then we're going to spend most of the session exploring what to do instead. We are going to be talking about a framework called SMART goals. Maybe some of you have heard of it, but we're going to go a little bit beyond just making your goals SMART. So before we get started, I just want to get a sense of the group here today. And I am wondering how many of you are into setting goals? Are you the type of person that cannot wait for January 1st to work on your goals for the year? Or are you someone that would rather just like go with the flow? So if you are team goals, write goals in the chat. And if you are go with the flow, you can write go with the flow. And I see some yes, sometimes goals, flow, okay. Team goals when there are deadlines, interesting. Sometimes goals, flow. Okay, so it sounds like maybe we are about half and half. Half goals, half flow. All right, so now I'm also curious if you are the type of person that likes to set goals. Do you usually stick to your goals and try to make them happen no matter what? Or are you the type of person that like 3 weeks in, you're like, what goals? I forgot what those are. Tell me, are you like, get it done? Maybe you can write in the chat, get it done, or what goals? Okay, mostly always meet them every year. That's awesome. What goals? Yeah, okay, so maybe again, we are about half and half. Well, if you said what goals, you are in good company because there are research studies that show that only about 6% of adults remain committed to a goal after a few weeks. So this is like super common that people get very excited to set goals, but then it's like really hard to stick with them. And we are going to be talking about why that is. But before we do that, let's first talk about why do we want to set goals? What is it that we are trying to accomplish when we set goals? And the first reason why it's important to set goals is because goals give you direction. When you set goals, it's an opportunity to say, this is where I'm going. And once you identify where you want to go, then the process of figuring out how you're going to get there, making a plan is a lot easier. So if you don't know where you're going, it's really hard to figure out how you're going to get there. The second reason why it's important to set goals is because when you set goals, you're being intentional. You are deciding what matters to you at this point in time. And of course, that changes, right? And this is why it's important to revisit your goals. But when you sit down New Year's Day and you are thinking about what goals do I want to work on, what you're saying is, I am choosing to put my focus and my energy into these things. So it forces you to come up with priorities. When you say yes to certain goals, sometimes we have to say no to other things. And then the last reason why it's super important to set goals is because we are able to measure progress. And this is important because a lot of times we are very good at focusing on all the things that we're not doing, how we're failing, how we're not being enough. But when we take time to actually sit down and see, oh, wow, look at, I set this goal and this is how far along I am, you remind yourself that you are actually doing good things. And that is an opportunity to celebrate. And when you take time to celebrate and feel good about what you're doing, then that's going to boost your motivation and also your commitment to your goals, and it will help you be more successful with your goals, which is kind of like a loop, right? You feel good about it, you're more motivated, so you are going to be more open to continuing to set goals. But as we mentioned, sometimes it's really tough to not only like stay with our goals, but make progress on those goals. And why is that? So let's talk about some mistakes that we sometimes make when we're thinking about goals. And the first mistake is lack of clarity. Sometimes we come up with a goal and we are not even sure what it means. And I will give you a couple of examples. It can sound like, I want to be better with money. Well, that doesn't really tell you what you're supposed to be doing or what it looks like. What better with money is different, to me than to somebody else. So that's not very clear. And when you're not very clear, you don't know exactly what you're supposed to be working on. Lack of clarity can also mean that you don't have a specific timeline or you don't know exactly when you have met the goal. So for example, a goal that says, I want to be a better saver. Well, I'm never going to be done being a better saver. I'm never going to be able to say like, I've met this goal unless I'm a little bit more specific. The second mistake that we can make is trying to do too much too fast. And let me know in the chat if you can identify with this. I certainly can. Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to work on this, and I'm also going to work on like 10 other things. So we're trying to do a lot of things at the same time, or we are trying to change something very drastically. So the effort that we require to meet the goal is very high. And that leads to burnout. Sometimes we can sustain that level of effort for a while, but it's not sustainable over time. Another mistake that we can make is not checking to see if the goal is realistic. So for example, I have people come to me and say, I want to be debt-free by next summer. And being debt-free by next summer might mean that you have to send an extra $500 to your credit card debt. Well, if you don't go back to your budget and see if you actually have an extra $500, that goal is not going to be possible for you. You're setting yourself up for failure. Another thing that is very common is that we do not take time to think about what are the things that can get in the way of me being able to achieve this goal. What are the barriers that I might be able to encounter? And because we don't think about it, then we fail to plan ahead. And sometimes these obstacles feel like they came out of nowhere. But in reality, if we take a little bit of time to think about it, we could many times see them coming and come up with a plan. So then when they happen, then you remember, oh, I knew this was going to happen and I have a plan for it. You're prepared. Another thing that we do is we think that we can achieve our goals by relying on discipline. And let me tell you, I know a lot of people that are very disciplined and they can will themselves to do something. And sometimes they're able to like meet their goal. But what happens is when you are relying on discipline and when the effort is so high, sometimes when you meet your goal, then you try to make up for all the time that you were sacrificing yourself, and you can kind of like get back into the same loop. So for example, this happens a lot with sometimes when people are in debt, they get very anxious and they go into a restrictive mode, right? I'm going to get rid of everything in my budget that's not completely necessary so that I can pay down this debt. And they do it. And once they get the benefit of like, hey, I did it, then they go right back and actually sometimes get into more debt because it was not done in a sustainable way and they were like so deprived through the process that now they have to kind of like make up for it. And then the last mistake that we make is that we forget to check in on our goals. And that has two problems. The first problem is that if you're not checking in with your goals, then you are not giving yourself an opportunity to see what's working, what's not working. Do you have to change anything? Do you need something different in order to continue to work on that goal? Or sometimes it might be that that's not the right goal anymore, and you have to come up with a new goal. So you have to pivot, right? So if we're not checking in, we're not giving ourselves the opportunity to change if something is not working. But we are also missing out on being able to, again, like celebrate that progress and being able to see like, hey, I'm doing it, and giving yourself like that boost of motivation of like, hey, like I'm doing this thing that I said that I was going to do. So these are a few ways how we don't set ourselves up to be successful with our goals. So what can we do so that we don't fall into those traps? And one framework that I like to refer to is SMART goals. Give me a thumbs up in the chat if you have heard about SMART goals, or a thumbs down if you this is the first time that you're hearing about it. Okay, so thumbs up. So a couple of people have heard of it. Yeah, no, okay. So it sounds like a lot of you have heard of it. Some people have not. I actually come from an education background. I was a teacher in my previous life, actually a special education teacher, and we used SMART goals framework to come up with learning goals for our students. And I think that there is a lot of opportunity to use this framework with our financial goals, but I also like to add my own twist to it because I do think that there are some things that are missing in the framework that can be really helpful when we are applying it to our finances. So we are going to spend the rest of the time together going through the SMART goal framework as it relates to our money, our financial goals. And I will also explore other things that could be beneficial. So what are we talking about when we are talking about SMART goals? The S stands for specific. The M stands for measurable. The A stands for achievable or doable. The R, some people say relevant, some people say realistic. I like to go with relevant just because I think the realistic part is sort of like covered in the A, the achievable part. And then the T is for time bound. And like I said, I love the framework. I do believe that there are some things that are missing from it when it comes to applying it to money. So we are going to also explore those things. Okay, so how are we going to make our financial goals specific? When we're thinking about being specific, we want to be very clear on what is it exactly that we are trying to accomplish. So your goal should tell you what action you're going to be taking. And a good thing to remember is if you should be able to answer the who, what, when, where, and how questions. I don't know if anybody remembers that from English class. So in order for you to know if your goal is specific enough, you should be able to answer those questions. Okay, but what is missing from this equation? I also want you to get clear on why you want to do this particular action. Why is this goal important to you? What is the motivation behind doing this thing? So a lot of times when we choose to focus on something, we believe that something will be different once we accomplish that goal. And I want you to get clear on what that is. And the reason why I want you to get clear on what that is because that's where your motivation and commitment is going to come from. A lot of people come to me and they say, I want to save money. I want to pay off my debt. I want to invest for retirement. I want to save for a home. Some of those things, especially like the first three that I talked about, if you think about it, those things by themselves are not intrinsically motivating, right? Paying off debt is not fun. I don't like sending my money to a credit card company every month. But I believe that if I pay off my debt, then my stress level is going to be less. Then I'm not going to be worried about spending money when I'm out with my family. So, what is it that you think will happen after you accomplish your goal? And I will give you an example of how to make a goal that's not smart to a goal that's smart, specifically with the S, right? Being specific. So a lot of people come to me and they say, I want to pay off debt. How do we make that specific? I want to pay off my Bank of America credit card, which has a balance of $3,000 by June of 2025. We have to recognize that in order for you to be that specific, you have to have some clarity on your debt, right? So there's like some steps that need to happen in order for you to be able to write goals like this. And this is the point. In order for you to come up with a goal that is going to be realistic, you need to know these like pieces of information. And then the way that we go deeper is we're going to ask why. Why do I want to pay off this debt? What will be different? Is it that I'm going to be able to sleep better at night? Because right now it's keeping me awake. I'm going to feel less stress. I'm going to be able to be present with my family when we are out on an outing instead of like worrying about how am I going to pay for this because I already have this debt. And again, right there, that's where you're going to get that motivation to make this happen. Okay, so let's move on to making a goal measurable. So this is where we're getting a little bit into the numbers and having to do math. Some goals are very like math oriented, right? So we're gonna figure out how much is it that I need and what is my timeline. And that's going to give me the amount of money that I have to put towards that goal. And I will go through an example. But there are other goals that are not so number based, right? So for example, we talked about maybe the desire of feeling like you have a better relationship with money. It's kind of hard to put a number to that. So we're going to take a look at what that might look like. Okay, so let's do I want to save more money. We're going to make it measurable by doing the math. So let's say that after this holiday season, you learn that you have spent $2,000 and it feels very stressful because maybe you have to put it on a credit card because you're not ready. let's say that January comes and you're very excited to come up with a goal. And you can say, my goal will be that I will save $2,000 by December of next year, December of 2025. And in order to do that, I have to transfer $167 a month into a holiday splurge savings account because I want to make sure that next year I can really enjoy going out and buying presents for my family rather than having to, stress about how I'm going to pay for them. So that is very specific and it's also measurable, right? You're going to be able to see if every month you are transferring $167 into this different account. Or we can look at the debt example and we can say, in order for me to pay off my Bank of America credit card by June of next year, I have to send $416 a month to the credit card. And one tip that I will give you is to use online calculators to do the math for you. I am a big fan of using calculators, especially when it comes to debt, because of course credit cards have interest. So you have to account for that in order to be able to come up with the amount that you have to send to meet your goal. And I have a QR code here for the Enrich website, which is part of the OEE, and it's a great resource. They actually have a ton of tools and calculators in there that can help you calculate how much you need to save for a certain goal or how much you need to send to a credit card. So I encourage to check that out. I've been in there playing and using all the resources. It's great. And I just saw that Jennifer dropped the link in the chat. Another tip that I will give you is to use a visual tracker to keep track of your progress. Some people are visual, like I am a very visual person, so it's exciting to see how you're making progress towards your savings or towards like paying off your debt by being able to color in different things. And if you Google savings tracker, you can find a ton of them. They're really cute. And I think it's just like a nice way to be able to keep yourself motivated. Okay, so we talked about goals that worked with numbers, but then sometimes we also have goals that are sort of difficult to put a number to. So the example that I have is I want to have a better relationship with money. So in order for you to know if you're making progress, you need to figure out what does it look like to have a good relationship with money for me. Maybe you want to be able to be in the habit of checking in with your money regularly. Maybe having a better relationship with money means that you're planning ahead of time. Or maybe it means that you're not checking your account all the time because you're anxious that you don't have enough money. Or it might mean that you want a certain amount of money as a buffer in your account. So it's different for different people. So I just encourage you to spend a little bit of time trying to figure out what it means and what does it look like so that you're able to see if you're making progress. Okay, so this is actually the meaty part. Goals need to be achievable. So how are we going to figure out if we are able to accomplish this goal? And we need to focus on looking at your capacity. And capacity can mean a lot of different things, but one easy one is your financial capacity. So going back to our example of the savings goal, If you want to work towards having that $2,000 holiday splurge goal and you know that you need $167, then you need to make sure that you go back to your budget and then you plug that in and you see if you can actually put $167 a month, or if you need to make some type of adjustment, right? Because sometimes we can be motivated enough to say like, this is important enough that I will make other changes. I think it's also important to ask if you have the necessary resources to work on your goal. And sometimes that might mean time. Sometimes that might mean, do you have the knowledge needed? Do you understand how credit card interest works? Do you understand what are good vehicles to be able to save for certain goals? And if you ask yourself those questions and you say like, oh, I think I might benefit from a little bit of more information, that's when you use the resources like the website that I just shared, or even the financial coaching that Worth and Wealth is offering this year. Another thing that I think sometimes we fail to think about is, what am I going to be saying no to in order to say yes to this thing? I think getting like clear on that and figuring out if you are able to say no to those things, if you want to say no to those things, and also what other goals you might be able to say no to, or like press pause on, in order to pursue the goal that you have identified as your priority. And this is actually a really good one. Sometimes when we are working on certain goals, we have to grow in other areas. So a lot of the people that I see that are working on financial goals, they actually have to grow in areas like time management, right? So in order for you to have a better relationship with your money, let's just say that you have identified that checking in on your money regularly and planning ahead, that means that you're going to have to find time, right? And it means that you might have to work on your boundaries, and that you might have to say no to some people or some things. And it might mean that you are going to be really uncomfortable, right? So you're going to have to grow in all these like different areas. And I want you to ask yourself, how am I going to support myself so that I can grow in those areas? So for example, like boundaries are really hard, right? Sometimes when you are doing money work, you have to have boundaries with yourself, boundaries with your kids, with like family members. I see a lot of people that are helping family members, and in order to get to a better place financially, they might have to have, you know, some hard conversations. So it might mean that you bring your therapist in and you say like, hey, I'm gonna be working on these things that will require me to say no to my family, and that's really hard for me. Can we make a plan for that? Like, what are some tools that I can use to make sure that I can you know, stick to my boundaries, have those like hard conversations. The next thing is thinking about what can go wrong. And a way that you can think about this is try to think if you have tried to do something similar in the past, and think about whether you were successful or not. So if you were successful, what helped you be successful? And if you weren't, if or maybe it didn't go like you planned, what didn't work about that particular time, and what would you do different? And again, start to think about, what are the things that will help me be successful this time? And once you identify those things, come up with a plan. and ask yourself, is there anything that I can do today to make sure that I'm going to be successful later? So for example, I have a lot of clients that are not happy with the amount of money that they are spending on takeout. That's usually one of the areas where people want to cut in order to be able to meet other goals. Well, if you know that you have long days and when you come home you're tired and you don't have any energy or capacity to be cooking, and please, if anybody if anybody identifies with this, please let me know in the chat because this is totally me. I do not have any creative capacity to think of meals at 4 o'clock. One thing that you can do is make sure that you have like some frozen things in the freezer that you can go to when when 4 o'clock comes and you have to like feed somebody. So that's like one small example of something you can do now to make sure that you're going to be successful later. Another thing might be that you come up with a script that you're going to say to friends or family when they invite you to something and that's not in the budget. So maybe like having something that you have prepared already, or maybe even having the conversation ahead of time and let them know like, hey, I'm working on this, so I'm not going to be saying yes to that many activities. And also maybe recruit some support, a friend, a trusted partner, say like, hey, I'm going to be working on this. Can you support me through it? Can you be the person that I call when I feel like I might give in, or something like that. And also, this goes back to not relying on your discipline all the time, right? That was like one of the mistakes that we talked about. What can you automate? Can you set the transfer, the $167 that you're gonna save for the holidays next year? Can you make that happen automatically from your paycheck so that you don't have to remember to do it? Maybe you open up a different savings account so that the money is gone, right? And you don't see it and you're not tempted to use it. Maybe you have to delete some apps from your phone that make it really tempting to, buy things that you have decided that you don't want to spend on. Another thing is unsubscribing from emails from your favorite stores, especially around the holidays. They're like sending you all the coupons, right? And sometimes you feel like you're missing out. So unsubscribe from those. Unfollow people on social media that make you feel like you're missing out. It might be that you banned yourself from certain stores. I hear Target does it for a lot of people. They go in for deodorant and they come out with all the cute Halloween decorations. So maybe in order for you to stick to your goal, you have to make a rule. I do not go into Target. Maybe you have to use Instacart to shop because if you go to the store, everything looks so good. I think somebody says, always have great intentions at the grocery store, but tired at the end of the day. Yes, so love quick oven meals. Yes, what I have been trying myself is on Sundays, I take a couple of hours and I make a few meals to be able to have, something ready to go. And then again, thinking about having conversations ahead of time. The holidays are coming, and sometimes some people feel a lot of pressure from family. So one thing that we have done in our family is that we have a rule that we do not do presents for adults. And, some people follow the rules and some people don't. And I had a really hard time with that because I felt bad that I was getting gifts and I was not reciprocating. So it was a process of me having to say, like, I'm just going to feel bad and that is okay, right? So I had to grow in my capacity of feeling uncomfortable because people were giving me things and I was not reciprocating. But that conversation was had ahead of time, and I cannot control what other people do, right? I can only control what I do myself. But it's not easy. And then again, checking in and celebrating. So taking time to evaluate the process and see like what's working, what's not working, what needs adjusting, and do I need any extra support? And giving yourself lots of grace, remembering that it takes time and celebrating the little wins, because again, celebration is what is going to allow your brain to think like, hey, I'm doing a good job. I need to keep doing whatever I'm doing. I'm very big on celebrating. All right, so achievable was meaty, was a lot, but we're getting to the R for relevant. And one of the things that we need to think about is the bigger picture of our lives. So when we're thinking about goals, we got to think about how does this particular goal fit in to the bigger picture of my life and what I want for myself and what's important for me and what I want for my family. I also think that it's really important to think about where you are on your own financial journey and whether your goal makes sense in relation to that. If you are someone that it's not used to checking in with your money all the time. You don't really have clarity of like where your money is going. It might be difficult to be working on a goal that's going to require you to do all those steps on a regular basis. Um, because you're not used to doing it. So maybe the goal is I am going to check in with my money every week. I am going to plan 1 week ahead, and then you build from there. And again, thinking about why is it important that you get these results? How is accomplishing that goal going to like help you overall in your life, not just financially, but in your overall picture? One resource that I am going to share is going to come in the email is a financial stages checklist. So that is kind of going to give you an idea of like what goals might make sense for you depending on where you are. So it starts at the level of like making sure that you're spending time every week with your money, and then that you're having money conversations with the people that you're managing money with, and that you know where your money's going, and then it builds up from there. Okay, so the last one is time bound. So we want to make sure that when we set financial goals, we give ourselves a time frame for accomplishing the goal. What is missing from this particular thing is that I want to make sure that your timeline accounts for the pace, right? The pace needs to be sustainable and you need to leave room for life to happen. Life always happens. It has a way. And sometimes we have to be flexible, right? So when we make goals that are like super tight and the timeline is like super short, it's really hard to be able to have room to be flexible and also to enjoy the process. Sometimes it's important to remember that stages are not forever. right? Sometimes when we're in it, it feels like it's going to be forever, but it's good to remind ourselves that it will pass, right? And you will get through to the other side. And it's important to enjoy the process. So another resource that is going to bring all of this together is a workbook that I put together for you to think through all of what we've talked about when you're setting your own financial goals. And we're getting to the end, and I wanted to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Brene Brown, and it says, "Hope is not an emotion. It's a way of thinking or a cognitive process. In very simple terms, hope happens when we have the ability to set realistic goals, so we know exactly where we want to go. We're able to figure out how to achieve those goals, including the ability to stay flexible and develop alternative. And we believe in our capacity to do this, by ourselves. So the thought of like, I can do this. And this is from her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. And I just love the thought that you can create hope in your life by being able to set goals that are realistic. It's to me such a beautiful thing. I see a lot of people that come to me and they're feeling pretty hopeless. They have struggled for a long time, and sometimes it's like hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I love that we have the agency to be able to create hope within ourselves by being able to set goals that are, realistic and are going to require us to stay flexible and be, persistent and make them happen. And if you need help with getting clear on what goals to work on coming up with a plan to make sure that you achieve your goals. Or if you want to, you come up with your own goals and you're like, I just want another set of eyes to see if, this is realistic. Please book a coaching session with me. I love helping people get clear on their goals and figuring out how to make them happen. And that's all I have for you. And if you have any questions or comments, you can pop them into the chat. If anything resonated with you, maybe share one takeaway. Yeah, if you scan that QR code, it should take you to a Calendly page where you can pick a day and time that works. If you don't see something that works for you, email me. Yes, work on those SMART goals. Yeah, flexibility is super important because like I said, life happens and we need to be able to pivot so that we can stay in the game. We only lose if we get out of the game. And flexibility allows us to stay in the game. Yes, one step at a time, one step at a time. That's how you will gain momentum. And that's a beautiful thing about goals. It allows you to find what you're gonna focus on. That's such a good question. Your financial team, it depends, right, on where you are. But usually you want somebody to take a look at your taxes, right? So you might want like a CPA or an enrolled agent. If you are someone that needs some support with like goals and coming up with a plan, a financial coach is always a good person to have on your team. And then, of course, you have financial planners that usually help you come up with a big plan for all the different areas of your life. And then they can also help you with things like investments and things like that. So you want a CPA, a financial coach, a financial advisor, or a financial planner. Yes, if the goal, if you can accomplish your goal, that's gonna help you stay motivated. So start small and build up. You want to get those wins, especially at the beginning, so that you can keep yourself like really motivated and committed. Yeah, I love the idea of building a team. If we think about it, we have like so many other areas in our lives where we get help. Like, why would money be different? Everybody needs a team. Any other questions or comments, takeaways? Thank you so much for being here and sharing your lunch time with us.
Thank you so much, Oriana. That was really, really helpful for probably all of us. Certainly for me, I always get some great takeaways and great reminders. So thank you so much. Just a couple points before we end our webinar today on goal setting. Our next workshop, here, I'll just share the QR code. So if people want to, so this is the QR code for the next workshop, which is next Wednesday, same time, 12 to 1. So please join us. We're talking about spending and budgeting strategies. Oriana did share this link, but I also want to share it again. It is access to a digital platform for financial education. It's called Enrich, and if you scan that, you can sign up for an account and access that information at any time. Lastly, when you leave our meeting today, you're going to see a survey. If you have just a moment and you can fill that out for us, we would love your feedback. So thanks, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Oriana. Thanks, everyone, for joining. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.